Our Add Entry form goes to a page called Insert Entry. Please copy the file name, create a new file called Insert Entry. Then open and close the PHP bracket and retrieve the content that was put into the form. Next, we need to see if the language exists or if it needs to be added. So there's the code that you need. Please use phpMyAdmin to retrieve the SQL by going into your language table, searching for a language that exists using like, and retrieving the SQL. Then paste the SQL in and replace the hard-coded language with the variable. We can then work out how many results we have. If the language is in our database, we can retrieve the language ID. If the language isn't in the languages table, we need to add it. We can set up a prepared statement and put two speech marks inside our bracket. We can use phpMyAdmin to generate the insert SQL. Go into your languages table and choose to insert. Then insert Fijian and say go. Then grab the SQL, paste the SQL into the bracket, then remove the language ID and the comma, remove the null and the comma, and instead of Fijian, replace it with a question. Then I can feed in the language that the user put into the form, and then I need to run execute for that to take effect. We can then go ahead and retrieve the language ID with the code that you see on your screen. Outside our else bracket, we can then add the entry to the database. Just like before, we're going to use a prepared statement. In the test data tab of our spreadsheet, we've got some Fijian words. So we can copy the word, go into our untranslatable data, choose to insert, and we can put in the word, the meaning. The language ID was 45. 3 is a positive sentiment. And we've got our example. We can then say go, and we can retrieve the SQL. Need double speech marks inside my prepare statement, and then I can paste that SQL directly inside. Each of my hard-coded values needs to be replaced with a question mark. That's what the prepared statement should now look like. We then use our bind parameter as follows. For bind parameter, we've got a string, an integer for the language ID, an integer for the sent ID, and a string for the example. After we set up that pattern, we then need to populate it with 5 of our variables that match the pattern. So the word, then the meaning, then the language ID, then the sentiment ID, and then our example. We can then execute the statement and close it when we're done. For our success page, we're wanting to put in a heading and some help text. We can then retrieve the ID from the entry we just added. Then outside our PHP bracket, we can include our results. We want to test that this worked by putting in some test data and adding an entry. All going well, it should work. And if you push recent entries, the entry you've just added should appear first. One other thing that we need to check is if we've got a language that so far isn't in the database, like Tongan, we can get a Tongan untranslatable. And when we add the entry, that also works as expected. If this was an assessment, you would want to systematically go through and show that users do need to put in something in each of the fields before the entry will be added.